All right. That feels a little hot. Got a little intimate, didn't it? I like it. What's that saying? Less is more? Less is more. So it took about 28 years to find the job that I love, that fit my personality, my experience, and my values, most importantly. So I'm a CISO Advisor, Chief Information Security Officer Advisor for Cisco Secure. A lot of people are like, what do you do? Especially my family. They have no idea what I do until they have a security problem, and then they all call me. I bring thought leadership to our security community in different ways, different unique ways. I take from my CISO friends' input, what they want to see, what they need, back into the organization. But my favorite part of my position is giving back to the community with organizations like CyberX. Let's hear it for CyberX. Yeah. I struggled taking this job, not because I wasn't qualified, because it does require a lot of public speaking, and believe it or not, you're seeing something that I'm not feeling, which is control, ease, right? But on the inside, I'm a nervous wreck, okay? So it takes practice to do this. But I'm really happy to be here at CyberX and with my Canadian friends. And I do have a lot of Canadian friends. We're going to get going here in a second. I just know it. Oh, don't look. So I'm really happy to be here talking to you today, and I want to make sure that I tell you everything, but I really want to talk about my path to this job that I love, okay? I think sharing stories about non-traditional paths is super important, and I think it's the only way that we're going to see more women in STEM, is if they see us. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is why I'm here and how I got here. And mine was a non-traditional path. I literally can tell you that you're embarking on a security path and you can get to where I am, but heaven knows, I don't know. What I can tell you is that going through my history can maybe give you a few tips and tricks along your path. And we all have our own journey. So I'm going to start with champions. My first champion was my mother. How many moms do we have in the room? Super important job. Number one job in the world, in my opinion. And my mother was my biggest fan, and she told me I could do anything I wanted to do. I didn't believe her. How many of you believed your mom? I didn't. I didn't believe my mom. But my mom worked, and she was incredible, and she put a lot of values into me that I still have today, and I love her for it. All those rules, all the things that we don't understand until later in life when we're mothers, that it means something. And then my best friend, I've known her since I was 15 years old, and I'm old. I'm 51. But my best friend has been with me on this journey for a long time, and she believed in me when I did not believe in me. My first boyfriend, my first kiss, we talked about it all. But she has 2 young adult women as children, and she wants me to be their champion, to be their coach, to be their mentor. And that is such a respectful responsibility that I do not take for granted. Seeing myself through her eyes, I'm unstoppable. She thinks that I can do things that only a best friend thinks that you can do, but I'm glad to have her in my court. I don't have a lot of friends, but I have 1, 2, maybe 3 really good girlfriends. And I encourage everyone in this room to find at least one, even the men in this room, one good girlfriend. That's what you need. So those were my champions. And then at a very young age, I came across a very non-traditional champion, a hockey player, a Canadian hockey player. She's from Quebec. Manon Rayon. She's not just any hockey player. She is the female hockey player of our time. She's the first woman to play in an NHL game. And her story is pretty incredible. And by the way, that's me. I'm 19 years old in that picture. And she is 1 year younger than me, I believe. 1 year younger than me. Look at her. She's tight. And look at those guys around. I don't know who those guys are. I don't remember their name. I'm sure they're famous. I remember her name. So I was in college. I didn't know who I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just going to school, paying the bills, didn't have a lot of money. My cousin was in marketing, so she got us tickets to the hockey games. Free beer, free food. And when you're a student, you go where the food is, right? You go where the free stuff is. And that's what we did. We would go to these hockey games. And then I noticed this woman is the goalie. A goalie. She's a goalie. Look at her. Look at her. Now, listen, you guys took us out of the running. I'm a big Maple Leafs fan. I wanted you to win. I wanted you to take it all the way. But you took us, the Tampa Bay Lightning, out of the cup this year. And I respect that. If you don't believe me, ask Cassandra. I cried about it. But she was in Atlanta skating on ice. I can barely skate, right? My husband plays hockey. He's from Minnesota. He's from the hockey state. I can barely chew and walk at the same time without tripping over myself. But this woman was blocking goals from men in a game that arguably designed by men, maybe? I don't know. But this game is not easy. And she did it. She did it with grace and flair. And she paved the way for other women. So watching her, I started believing my mother that I could do anything. So I graduate college with a communications degree. There were many paths that I wanted to take, but this is the path that I took. And I can tell you that path wasn't without challenges. First job out of college was with a major managed services company. So if you think about what that is, it's mainframe, server, desktop support. And they hired me as a sales assistant. It was my first job out of college. I wasn't qualified to do anything besides communicate, right? So I was the first thing that you saw when you walked into the office. Smiled a lot. I asked for more responsibility. I made sure I knew who was walking through the door. I made sure I knew who the executives were and they were taken care of. I was taught how to write an email at this company, and I think we should teach how to write a corporate email in college. I think that should be a course. But what happened is I forged relationships in that lobby. And 6 months after I was hired, another gentleman said, hey, you want to come be on my team? We just landed the Nations Bank account. That's a large Southeast bank. It's now Bank of America. And we had been granted their account. And so what that meant is we developed the program for their managed services contract from scratch. So I dug in, I learned every aspect of that business that I could learn. And Bill was my champion. Within 5 years, I had Bill's job. Mainly because Bill championed me. When you think about a champion, champions are people who understand what you want, not what they want. Now, I've had champions that actually don't understand what I want. They think they understand what I want. I've articulated what I wanted, but they're navigating for me for different positions. So you got to make sure that your champions know what you want. And you got to be vocal about it. You got to tell them. And you got to tell them multiple times. Because your leadership, whether you want to admit it or not to yourself, are talking about you behind your back. That's their job. And if you think about that, give them something to talk about, right? And make sure they know what you want. Do y'all like my cheat sheet? I had to do a cheat sheet because I want to make sure I give you all the information that's important, not just me up here yammering. So, champions being everywhere and knowing that people are talking about you behind your back and that you're making sure that they understand you. Some of my champions today are CISOs, the people that I consult with. And I believe, like, if you mentor, you learn from them, right? If you champion, you're learning from them. If you have a coach, you're learning from them. But what I would say to you is you're doing all of those roles as well. But if you pay attention and listen, the people that you're champion, like my CISOs, they'll champion you too. And my role is to help people in very high-stress jobs, right? So I'm going to talk about those complexities and my experience. So I'm going to roll the clock back to 2015. It was a year where I was at my previous employer, and we were hit by a nation-state attack. One of the largest seen at the time. I was on the front lines of that attack. I can tell you it was difficult. It was exhausting. I use the word spent a lot. And that time for me was not only hard professionally, but that's the same year that I found out that I could not have children. I was newly married, and sometimes the cards are in your favor, and for me, the cards were not in my favor for this juncture. So a very difficult personal, professional year. A lot going through my head, juggling a lot of responsibilities. We had litigation, audits, the audits we had. We had to reevaluate how we were talking about security at our company. Inside our company, I wasn't allowed to talk externally for obvious reasons. I was deposed. Has anybody ever gone through a deposition? It's grueling. It makes you feel like you don't know anything. So imagine, if you will, all of that complicated situation coupled with new marriage, and a difficult circumstance. Plus, I kept it all a secret at work. Nobody knew what I was going through. It's a good thing I had a coach. I employed this woman, paid for it. Alex was someone that I researched heavily. I actually interviewed 3 coaches before I selected Alex. I talked to them about their process. I talked to them about their approach, the tools that they provided. I talked about my situation, both personally and professionally, and I selected her. Alex was not easy on me. Of course, I didn't ask her to be. And I think if you pay for something and you have an impression of what you want to achieve, and you articulate that to somebody, and they provide a service, you should listen to them, right? Feedback is sometimes hard to hear. And when you're going through the challenges that I was faced with from a personal and professional situation, let me tell you, our first meeting, our first coaching session, think tears. Think hyperventilating. Think all out, lost it. And what did she do? She listened to me. And she talked me through it. Boundaries were broken professionally. Personally, I was a shell of a human. I wasn't even participating in my family. My friends did not recognize me. My best friend, that champion I was talking about, told me she thought I was going to have a heart attack. She was probably right. You see, as women, we face challenges differently, and we put on a mask. And then, I don't know about you, but as a woman, I don't want anyone to ever see me cry. I don't want anyone to ever see me fall apart. And I want to be perfect. Let me tell you something. That's not real. It's just not real. So, Alex gave me the tools. She taught me some things. She put me through some exercises that, quite frankly, I didn't understand. And I don't really like talking about my feelings, particularly in public. Because people tend to hold that against you, don't they? So it's scary. So she started working with me. She started helping me articulate some goals, and she held me accountable. And then she told me something that I think everybody should hear. Pam, are all of these people doing this to you, or are you enabling them to do this to you? Boy, was that a wake-up call. So I did more work. I had to think about what I wanted. I had to invest in long hours of what felt like essays about myself, which is really annoying to me. So I did. And we worked on my values, what was important to me. She's a big reason I'm here today. I wrote a mission, a real mission that aligned to my passions. I revamped my value to the world. And I thought about what I wanted my own voice to be, what I wanted to be remembered for, what my strengths were, not what everybody else thought I was good at. Do people know you're good at something? Tell everybody what you're good at? Does that align to who you think you are? It's great when it does, right? But I was living two lives. I had a professional persona and I had a personal persona. And they were drastically different. And I had to rationalize that. And it wasn't easy. It took a few years. But I found my voice. And I did find my voice through another coach, Jason Weiss. He's now my coach. And what we're doing at Cisco, and why I love this job so much, is we hold what we call a rising CISO, new CISO leadership development program. So we are taking 2 days with this workshop and Jason to help people understand how to uniquely harness your own skills to be a better security executive. And through that work, the first program, I think I had been at Cisco for about 4 months. And my boss was like, you're going to this program, we're going out to San Diego. And he's a current champion of mine, puts me everywhere. He's the reason I'm sitting here today. I'm telling you what, him and Ali, if you know Ali, they're the reason I'm here today. But they champion me to be in this seat so you can see me, which I think is brilliant. Isn't that brilliant? Isn't that great? But he said, we're going to San Diego, and we're going to do this workshop that we'd been working on for a few months, and you're going to participate. And I was like, oh, whoa, 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 I didn't sign up for that. But I did. And that first cohort, that first group, if you know anything about going through a breach, how many of you have been through a breach? I know, we're recording, you can't talk about it, I get it. But if you go through something like that, it quiets you. It changes you. And I was afraid to get out here. But that first group and Jason, they helped me find my voice again. And thankful for that, because my story is rich, and it is powerful, and it is unique. And it doesn't matter that I made mistakes. What matters is that I'm right here, and young girls see me. And they want to see you too. So find your North Star, listen to the voices, sometimes paid voices, but listen to the voices that are aligned to your values. They know who you are and who you want to become. They'll help you get there. I didn't do this alone. So let's talk about post-breach. Let's talk about, that secret I had. So as soon as the breach was over, you go into what I would call, what I can only describe as security on steroids, okay? I'll give you, for instance, everyone in the world at the time, pre-breach, were deploying privileged access management in 2015. Everybody. We had a pilot. We were going through the same thing. Everybody, all my peers were. Privileged access management is not something people enjoy doing. Has anybody found anybody that likes that extra step they've got to take? Yeah, I didn't think so. She's laughing. So when you're rolling something like that out in an enterprise that I was in, I don't know if you know anything about the company I was with, but think Fortune 20. Very complicated environment. When you're rolling something like that out, it takes time. You have to be thoughtful, right? You have to have stakeholders that believe in what you're doing. Nothing makes believers out of people for security without, like going through a breach, right? Everybody was knocking down my door. So we rolled out privileged access management in 14 hours. Fortune 20. What it takes to do that is almost superhuman. Did I just say I was a superhuman? I think I did. I'm kidding. It wasn't just me. It was a lot of people. You need a lot of support when you do something like that. But we did. So think about that. Like, going through all of that, can't have a kid. What do I do, right? As a woman, I want to give my husband a kid. I love that man. So we go into the adoption process. So a couple of years into that noise, into that process, I find out I'm going to have a baby. My husband and I were selected, and she's 7 months pregnant. And remember, I don't talk about this stuff at work. My boss didn't even know. I'll never forget, we were in Boston. My boss was there. Alex, the woman that you saw on the picture before, she was literally nagging me for 2 years. She was like, you have to tell him. You have to tell your boss you're in the process. And I'm like, do I really? Yeah, you probably should. But to my defense, don't you love it when people say that, to my defense, right? Because you're just working people to get on your side. To my defense, I was nervous, and I was scared about the image that would portray to all the men around me, above me, beside me, that worked for me. Are they going to stop giving me work? Well, that was a dumb thought, right? Like, just a dumb thought. But are we, why are we doing that to ourselves? So we're in Boston. We're doing the IBM X-Force, right? Range Force? I forget what it's called, but it was great. It was great. We're doing it with all of our executives. It's fun to see executives run around and scurry when they don't know what to do, and you're just like, and you can't help them. You're not allowed to help them. I was not allowed to help them. I'd been through it, right? But great tabletop exercise with all of our executives. And it was after that, and we're literally leaving. I'd been with him for 2 days. We had plenty of opportunities, dinners, drinks after dinners, drinks before dinners. I could have pulled him to the side. I had a little liquid courage, but I never did it. And we're literally leaving. We're in the airport. Everybody's going to the lounge. And this was a man who didn't really like crowds or being around people. And he was very good to me. A kind human being. Very professional. And I was like, hey, can I walk you to your gate? Because everyone else going into the lounge. And he was like, sure. Because my husband had called me that morning. He was like, tell him before you leave, Pam. Now, we had been selected. We had 2 months, right? So we're walking in the airport, and I'm still nervous. And I was like, so I got to tell you something. And he was like, you're not quitting, are you? And I was like, no, I'm not quitting. We're going to have a baby. And he was like, what? And he was like, congrats. I'm like, we were in the adoption process, and then I'm fumbling over my words, right? And I'm like, but we've been selected. He was like, what? He stops, and he gives me a big hug, and he was like, that is so great. He was so supportive. So supportive. I'm like, but I have a plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And he was like, couldn't even enjoy the moment. So great to me. So I had a great team around me. I had a great support system. I will tell you, my choice of living arrangements, like being away from your family when you want to have a kid, I don't know what I was thinking. We had to find people with kids and hire a bunch of nannies, but it all worked out. But super supportive. My team was fantastic, but I had to have a lot of coaching from this woman, this mentor, Tracy Edmonds. She was our chief diversity officer, and she walked me through it. After I talked to my boss, I started telling people. She was one of the executives that knew before I told my boss. And when I talked to her, she would come out from around her desk, right? Come around, she held my hand, and she said, take the time with your son. Take all the time. All of it. We'll be here when you get back. Why don't we think about that? Why do we worry about that? But we do. She was so amazing. I took all the time. I would have taken more. I would have taken a year. And everything was fine. I came back to things that were better than they were when I left. So, your mentors through life, they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to give you words of wisdom that you don't know are nuggets until 5 years later. Write it down. Listen to them. I had a mentor once. She said, you need to write down phrases, Pam, and collect them. Taylor Swift does this. I just saw an interview with her. She writes down phrases and words that she loves. And I'm like, wow, my mentor told me to do that. She also told me, you can do anything you want, just not all at the same time. And boy, was she right. She's the one that introduced me to the book Essentialism, The Pursuit of Less. If you struggle saying no as a woman, read that book. Essentialism. It's amazing. But it's that concept. You can do anything you want, just not all at the same time. Greg McCowan, I think, is the author of that one. So listen, here's me now. I'm Pam Lindemoen. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. He's 5. He's gorgeous. He's in the back seat laughing. I'm a CISO Advisor. I'm a teacher. I can tell you I'm a good friend. I'm a mentor. I'm a coach. I'm a champion. I'll tell you what I'm not. I'm not confused anymore. I know where I want to be. And I don't listen to anybody tell me where I need to be. I'm my own champion. Do you know how hard that is, talking about yourself? I hate it. I really do hate it. So I splash a little humor in there. Have you noticed? But hey, now I have my own podcast. Nothing like a security professional with a podcast. Like, what? That doesn't even make sense, does it? But those people are my mentors. They're mentoring me through it like no one's business. My co-host, Tasha DeNose, she's the most articulate, brave woman I've ever met. And she's good at it, and she holds my hand virtually most of the time, sometimes physically. But I'm not good at podcasting. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at being on a stage. I absolutely have the jitters the entire time I'm sitting here. But I have friends in the business. I have tools, right? But I have a voice. And I think it's important for women, especially, to use their voices. And I'm here for you to see me scared, see me vulnerable. Because if we don't, who will? Plus, I'm tired of being in rooms with men and seeing like 3 or 4 women. I love this room. I want this room every single time. So, here we go. Here's the end. And then we're going to do Q&A, my favorite part. So think about your own voice. Think about your mission. What do you stand for? This is mine. Do you think I want to share this with the world? The world holds you accountable. And let me tell you, not in nice ways, right? What are those, trolls? Are they trolls? Like, I don't want to be around trolls, except for the cute ones, the ones that my son loves. You know that movie, Trolls? I love that movie. But listen, this is who I am. Find your champion, your mentors, your coaches. Build the career you want. Be brave. Get on the stage. Get out there. We need you. And we need allies. We need those men in the room. Help them. If you're not speaking for yourself, they'll speak for you. My boss does. Dan is like, he's the best. Find those leaders. Gravitate towards them. Hang out with them. Let them be your voice too. That's okay. You don't have to talk about yourself all the time. Go do good stuff. People will talk about you. Go do hard stuff. Listen, I didn't want to go into security. I thought they were the weirdest nerds of them all, right? Like, I had infrastructure, I got them. Application development, I ran a group. I knew those guys. I got them. Security people? Well, they're a different kind of nerd. I love my nerds. I can say I'm a nerd. I've been a nerd my whole life. Ask my sister. She tells me all the time. Challenge yourself. I'll challenge you. What do you want this to say? What do you want people to think about you? Think about it. Consider it. Life's too short not to. Don't let it be 28 years before you're doing what you love. And if there's anything I can do to help you, I'll do it. Ask my friend Cassandra, who gave me my Toronto pen. So listen, figure out your voice and be loud. All right, here's a good part. We got a question up here already. Look at that, hands like, me.
So you mentioned to be loud. So sometimes when you're loud or being real or being brave, people think you're fake, like in the society. I've been
Amy,
facing
who agrees with her? I do, absolutely.
I've been facing it recently and I'm struggling to overcome it. Like, do you have any advice on how I can overcome this part?
Yeah. So, can I tell you a story?
Sure.
Look, I'm tall, I'm blonde, and I've been with men my entire 28-year career. Sometimes you got to be quiet because you're physically loud. Am I right? And sometimes you got to be loud because you're physically small. And so you have to go into all situations differently, right? The story I'll tell you is I grew up in the South, and I have a Southern accent. If there's wine later, you will definitely hear it. My son is part Floridian, part from Argentina. So he does not look just like me, but a little bit, the eyes a little bit, but he's a little different. But we live on a canal, and he says canal, okay? I've gone through life getting advice from people my whole life. You smile too much. Slow down. You're too fast. You're making us look bad. You're going to get that wherever you go, okay? It's noise. That's why you need those people in your life to tell you when it's appropriate, maybe when it's not. The story I have is there was a guy that I worked with for a long time, very smart, very smart. Probably the smartest person in the room every single time he was in a room. You know the type, right? The only way that I could get him to listen to me was to be loud and obnoxious. And he would roll his eyes. And I didn't care because I wanted him to listen to me. And I wasn't going to share the room with him every single time, with him being the tallest, the smartest, and the loudest. So guess what? I did. But you got to be careful with that. You have to navigate rooms that's not appropriate. Good news is we were friends. Believe it or not, we were friends. Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? He didn't know. He didn't know. So you've got to navigate that room. And if you're not sure, phone a friend, call a friend. And I would argue practice how to respond. But there are going to be times where you're going to be outside of your comfort zone. You're going to have to say things that might not be room thought, so to speak, and you're going to have to do it. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to make mistakes. I've offended people. Early in my career, I was taken to HR a lot. I didn't know what I was doing. Even though I had a minor in HR, I should have known what I was doing. But you know, I wanted to be people's friends, and sometimes you can't be their friends. You have to be their boss, and I didn't get the difference. I learned the hard way. You get taken to HR a couple of times, you figure it out. But it's not a science, and you're going to make mistakes, but be okay with making mistakes and have an entourage around you. It seems like you got some friends, right?
Yeah, my lab mates.
Lean on them. They'll help you. Right? Am I right? You'll help her, right? Yeah. And sometimes you need them to talk for you. Maybe a man in the room that you trust, pull them aside and say, hey, I'm feeling a little anxious about this. I might need some help. You know what you got. You know where you're going, who's there. You know the personalities. And everybody's got a personality. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Oh, the questions are lining up. I like it. I was worried. I didn't know if we were going to have questions.
So I'll say, my question is, as a woman leader, how to earn the respect that you need? Suppose, say, I'm just throwing in an example. I'm bringing in some business, and it's my account, it's my business, but I'm telling that to my colleagues, more senior in age, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of, they don't hear it. They hear it. They know it's me bringing the business. But when my partner joins the call, they suddenly hear it and respond. And I have been saying the same thing, but they don't give
Hear
that
it,
respect or even hear it. It's so obnoxious. How to get past that, keep your cool and not let them get under your skin.
Yeah. Can anybody relate to her? Probably even the men can relate on this kind, right? All right, so another story. Are you good for another story? Okay. So that first job that I had, Bill, I can talk about him because I can say his name out loud. I can say Dan's name out loud because he's my current leader, and I just like giving him a hard time. But the very first boss he's the guy that taught me how to write an email. He taught me a lot, okay? And I say learn wherever you can. Peers, associates, everybody. Watch what everybody's doing. But I remember it was probably 2 years in, he was hiring somebody to be his right hand, okay? Now, mind you, I'd been on the account since the inception, right? I'd built the metrics, they had sat me in front of executives in Charlotte, financial executives. Have you ever done that? Boy, and I had all my data, like I was a data-driven person, like I knew my stuff, right? I had all the relationships, and so he hired his right-hand person. Supposedly, this was his successor, okay? Because I wasn't always the obvious choice, okay? So it was probably 2.5 years in, this guy comes on board, I train him up. And when I say I train him up, he got all of my relationships. He got, and he was handling the mainframe crit sit calls that I had been handling. 400 senior engineers reported matrix up through us. And so I was managing those guys, mostly guys. I taught him the service level agreements, the contracts, where we stood. I handed it to him, right? So, and I liked him, good guy, right? Decent human being. And I liked my boss, and I liked what I was doing. I was learning a lot. And I was grateful. I made $21,000 a year, okay? And I thought I was flying high, okay? $21,000 a year, running the second largest account for this company. And I would argue I was doing a lot of work. So, well, I would argue now because Bill's not going to come and tell you any different. No, I'm just kidding. So fast forward, performance appraisal time comes around, and I get a 10% raise. Now, 10% of 21,000 is not that much money. You know, do the math. But that's unheard of in the corporate world. I don't know if you guys work in the corporate world, but you get like 3, 2, maybe 5 if you're good, right? And that's just the way it is. So he gave me a 10% raise. And I'm literally in a queue helping someone else out on the team, and he walks by, he was like, I'm kind of surprised, Pam, that you didn't really say much about your raise. And I'm like, okay, I think I said thank you. And he was like, yeah, but it's 10%. And I was like, hey, Bill, I'm just going to say this. I'm grateful. But you just hired somebody about 3 months ago that I've handed everything over, and I trained him up. And I guarantee you his salary is closer to yours than it is mine. So I'm sorry I'm not doing cartwheels down the hallway. I'm grateful. There are going to be lots of those moments in your career where you don't get credit. And what you have to decide is, am I getting enough credit for where I am right now? And listen, there are ways to communicate what you do without being obnoxious, okay? That other guy, he's kind of obnoxious. I'm with you. You got to be creative. I'm sorry. You got to work harder hours. You got to be in before everybody. You got to leave after everybody. It is what it is. But the longer you do that, the more people are going to see it. And when an opportunity rises, they're going to give it to you.
Hi. Earlier you were talking about being loud. I don't know about everyone else, but in my experience, being loud, maybe without the tact that we all gain later in life with experience and age, but I was loud when I really started. I took my space. I wasn't afraid. I was loud. I put my hand up because I knew I was good. But then what I learned is, when a man behaves the exact same way as I am, he is confident, leadership material. But when I am like that, I am a 5-letter word that starts with B and rhymes with rich.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women do get labeled like that. Women who are unapologetically expressive of what they want to be, their ambitions, and who don't want to slow down, who are loud. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I've been called every name in the book. Aggressive. Pedo was my nickname as a leader. Pain in the... As my employees, when I ran a software development group, that was my nickname. The B word, aggressive, you name it, I've been called it. I don't care. I don't care what they call me. I get shit done. And there are going to be moments in your career where you're going to have to leave to get the respect you deserve. And listen, we have not fixed the norms, the culture. We haven't fixed it yet. We got a long way to go. 24% of cybersecurity jobs are held by women. And I guarantee you at the top, it's a lot lower. So we got a lot of work to do. And sometimes being loud is not the way. When I say be loud, that was that last slide, like use your voice about who you are. When you're in rooms, you really have to look at where you are and how you have to act. And sometimes it's not the way you want to, but you got to do it. You got to do it for the next generation of women. They need us. And so it's a gut feeling, in my opinion. Phone a friend, right? And sometimes you're going to have to leave. I think we got time for one more question, and then we got to go. Yes. Oh, look at that. Look, they're helping each other. That's what women do. We help each other. We're on it.
My question is around balance. One of the things I find, I'm an executive director in the federal government working in cybersecurity, and there are not very many of us women.
That's right.
across
That's
the
right.
board. And so I struggle a lot with balance because I care about helping and empowering the next generation. I also have a lot in terms of a portfolio.
Yeah.
And so how do you balance the demands on your time with your personal situation? And thank you for sharing also and being courageous and sharing your story, because I know that is hard.
Yeah.
As somebody who also tries to be real. So I was just curious if you could speak to how you deal with balance.
Yeah,
please.
there's no such thing as balance. I mean, I don't know who coined that phrase, work-life balance, like whatever. Like somebody is going to lose in this equation. I couldn't be on this stage if I didn't have the best partner in the world. You got to find your boo. Life is scary. Find your boo. I'll say this, support systems are huge. You know, that best friend that was telling me you're going to have a heart attack. You got to listen to your people, okay? So gauge where you are. I now have tools to gauge where I am and what I need. I have a great assistant, Caitlin, that does not let me do things that I can't do anymore. She protects me more than I protect myself and my family, which is amazing. She has my husband's cell phone number. Like, I'm sure they talk about me behind my back, which is totally fine. But you've got to have tools. If you have not started time boxing as a director, so Alex, she's the one that she was like, every minute on your calendar, book it. I'm like, for how long? She was like, forever. And I was like, what? So time boxing is huge for me personally. That's a tool that I leverage. And that means really paying attention to where you're spending your time and when you produce the most results. And then boundaries, which women, I'm telling you, I have a problem with, like saying no. So you have to stick to your boundaries. I have 5 values that I hold dear to my heart, family, spirit, health, like those things. And if it doesn't feed one of those, I say no. So it's really all about time boxing and managing yourself. No one's going to do it for you. That's the stuff you have to do for you, and it pays off. Was that helpful? Hey, listen, I'm here all day. Evidently, I'm speaking 2 more times, but that's my boss and Ollie. Thank you very much for being so attentive. And listen, we're all in this together. This is a community. Use it. It's really important. Thanks, everybody.